guests for you. First, I want to introduce Duane Papetti from A-1Reality of Central Massachusetts. He is the owner and broker, also does a property management aspect of it. So Duane, thank you so much for being on the show today.
Alex, thanks for having me.
Yeah, so first and foremost, if you don't mind introducing yourself to the folks at home, what is it that A1 is, and what is it that you would do for your company and the folks in the central region?
Well, we do things a little different, although we're a full-service real estate company and we do some property management. I started in this business back 30 years ago, buying residential income, 3-4 unit buildings, rehabbing them, and then renting them. And at the time, it was before the internet.
Yeah.
So you really had a hard time getting information. And the realtors I was working with to show me the properties, back in the day, they were sub-agents. So they actually worked for the seller. They didn't work for the buyer.
Gotcha,
although they drove you around everywhere.
Sure.
When it came down to it, I can't tell you anything because I work for the seller. So the laws have changed since that, thank goodness. But I realized by my second property that they couldn't lead me to the information I needed for tenant landlord information.
Yeah.
So I decided at that time I should get my own license because most of the information was tied in with the Board of Realtors, but through Boston, other places, because they just didn't have the information out there. And it kind of parlayed. I was buying property, rehabbing it, renting it, and then people started coming to me and saying, hey, you do this, you know how to do this. Can you help me, or can you help my son? He wants to buy real estate and he wants to make sure he's doing it right. And over the years, I kept buying and rehabbing, and then I would sell and do some 203K loans to do the rehab. And then I did a 1031 tax exchange. Yeah. And all those years, these 30 years of accumulation have come into actually building A1 Realty. About 9 years ago, I walked away from the office I was with for a number of years and opened up A1. Yeah.
Excellent. So obviously, I think it's no secret that Worcester has started to become a booming city, and a lot of folks are kind of migrating west of the capital and seeing Worcester as a forever home. What kind of trends are we looking at now? Are we seeing that? Are we kind of pricing out? Are we running out of stock? Are we, what is it that we're seeing in Worcester that we hadn't seen in the past 15 years?
Well, we definitely, we've had an increase in values on the multifamily properties more than anything.
Sure.
Single families have come up somewhat, depends on the areas, but the multifamilies have come way up. And that drive from when Tim worked so hard on getting the trains in and out of Worcester,
big piece.
That has brought it, along with all these new apartments right downtown, which are making it easy for people to come in. Yeah. But they're finding that they can get a little further into the city with Uber and Lyft and things, and get a little less expensive apartment and in one of the neighborhoods, which is also driving up the property values of three families. So we've seen the three families. I can remember back in 04 when they were maxing out around 3.25, and I was telling everybody, now's the time you sell. You'll probably never see these numbers again, you know. And here we are, 14, 15 years later, and I'm saying it now, these things are 385 to 400. I'm saying, if you ever wanted to get out, now's the time to take the money.
It's funny, we were talking offline, just saying, the value of these three families and multifamilies in general have went through the roof. Are we seeing something like we saw in South Boston, maybe Somerville, Medford, that kind of group where they were just your typical three-family neighborhoods, just like we have here in Worcester, but now they're kind of going through the roof, where they're on the market for less than 10 days sometimes, where it's kind of that idea.
We are seeing more and more people coming from the east to buy because of better value.
Sure.
I've had buyers come in from the Boston area, all around Dorchester, and when they come running in, because you can't touch anything out that way for $400,000 or $350,000.
Yeah, no twist about it.
So there seems to be the same core 5 or 6 buyers when we put a multifamily on the property. Those 5 or 6 buyers come running the first 2 days,
absolutely.
And they're buying up a lot of stuff. I mean, we've got companies in the city now that have bought up 60, 70 buildings.
Sure.
And they're going right through them, making them gorgeous.
Yeah.
They're stripping them down from the outside. They're doing all the inside with granite and nice cabinets and washer dryer units. and they're making them really nice properties.
Yeah, and I think that the idea being that these are going to be units that you can rent at a premium price because they're at that level now.
Right.
Right. They're not just your typical, 3 families that we used to see, 20 years ago, where you're kind of renting it for a year, maybe 2 years, and you're moving on to the next level, right?
Yeah, it's a double-edged sword.
Yeah.
Because they're driving the rental prices up.
Of course, yeah.
And a lot of people in Worcester still can't afford that price.
Yeah.
I get a lot of people that call me all the time on rentals because we do rentals, and they call me up and they say, "Listen, I'm looking for a 2-bedroom for $800 or $900."
Yeah,
And I'm telling them we just don't
Yeah.
know of anything like that anymore.
Yeah.
I've got an older couple that I've known for the longest time, and they've been in a building for about 8 years. It's a 2-family,
Sure.
and they've been paying $800 a month.
Sure.
And they both have health issues,
Yeah.
fixed incomes, and they just called me up and said, "You need to help me. My landlord just went up to $1,000."
That's still a good
Which
price. right
which
there.
isn't a bad price, but for
Yeah.
someone on a fixed income, like a lot of people in
of course.
Worcester, it's difficult.
So it brings me to my point that my next point here is that we at the chamber we embarked on a housing study about a year ago. So we're going to be rolling it out at our Game Changers event, which will be October 25th at Mechanics Hall.
Right, I'll be there.
Yep, of course. So it'll be great because the idea being that there's different stages, we call them life stages, of where you're going to live. Obviously, fresh out of college, you're probably living in an apartment or very
You're in
small.
the edge.
Right, exactly.
You're in a
You're
room.
absolutely, right.
Yep.
And then from there, you're going to a single family home with your family, a small young family, continue on to the next stage when you have a bigger family. But then, you become, the empty nester where you kind of downgrade, and then you go into maybe a senior community. So there's different life stages for all aspects
Exactly,
of your livelihood. So we want to make sure that there's availability for everybody. And right now we're kind of seeing, we don't want to be in the same position as Boston was. I think that they kind of didn't realize what was happening around them in the surrounding boroughs, if you will. They just all of a sudden exploded,
Right.
And everybody was like, well, I've been living in this property for
30 years.
yeah, right, exactly,
Yeah.
30, 40 years,
Right.
and now I can't afford to live in my own property.
Right.
So
Yeah, we don't want to see that happen in the
Yeah.
Worcester area. I think we'll have a correction
Yeah.
on the multis. Like I said, the single families have increased in value, but
Yeah.
not like we saw go up so fast. There's still some pockets in Worcester, in June Street area, places like that,
Oh, yeah, of
that you can get a nice value on a nice single family home.
Absolutely.
They're older, early 1920s, 30s,
but
40s.
it's New England. I think you can
Right, everything's
Yeah,
like that
yeah.
here, but they're nice homes, nice neighborhoods,
Yeah.
and you can still get a decent value over there.
I appreciate it. Well, so I wanted to touch on your property management aspect. If you kind of can give us a little information on that.
So I got into property management only because I had all the properties,
Yeah.
and people started calling me up saying, "Hey, listen, can you help me out with my property? I don't know what I'm doing here. I've got tenant issues, things like that." And then over the years of doing all this, I kind of backed off taking the properties and more into helping people because I was getting calls from a lot of older people and new people that own 2 and 3 units. That's all they own. There's maybe a 2-unit, they got left to them, or a 3-family, the daughter got left from the mother, and she doesn't know what the laws are.
Sure.
So I developed this consultant business where we go in and we check all their paperwork. We ask questions like, how do you advertise?
Right.
Because you have to be careful how you advertise, what you say and what you can't say.
Absolutely.
Right. Do you screen your tenants properly? People don't even know how to screen tenants
Sure.
mainly.
What can you ask for?
Do you take first, last security? Do you just take first and last? Do you do leases or tenant at wills? What's the difference? What's
Sure.
the pros and cons of that?
Yeah.
Do you know the new marijuana law?
Right,
Because
big one.
Yeah, you could have a non-smoking in the unit, tenant agreement. But then what about growing?
Growing.
Everybody can
Everybody
grow
has
6
plants,
plants.
right, 6 plants.
So how does that get covered? Do you have the right paperwork?
Yeah.
And that was the big thing I was getting was the owners were more concerned that they had the right paperwork for the tenant to make sure that the tenant wasn't being taken advantage of by them. Most owners, they're pretty careful. They don't want to lose their property. They want to
Sure.
do things right.
Yeah,
So they
absolutely.
want to make sure they're doing things right. So we go in and we do all this paperwork with them, go over everything, make sure, and we stay on board with them and help them.
Good.
So when they have a tenant opening,
Sure.
the place opens, we can go in there, we can help them advertise, show them how to do it, help them screening, show them how to do it. We lead them to all this. So they may not do it for another 2 or 3 years.
Yeah.
So they may call us back again and go, I kind of forgot so we go over it with them. We go through the paperwork because we leave them copies of everything so they have everything.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? We go through it. So
That's
we kind
great.
of stay on board, yeah.
Yeah, and one of the things I don't think people realize is how important it is to screen on both sides. Say, hey, we got to make sure that I have the correct tenant that's going to fit my model for my property, right?
That's right.
And I think we were talking about it offline as well. There's some folks that really take pride in their property, others don't. But you really want to have that piece of property as it's your biggest investment in your life, right?
We say it's your most valuable possession as far as, purchase.
Yeah.
Your most valuable possession is your family, of course. But, as far as a purchase, your most valuable purchase. So you don't want to lose that opportunity that could bring you over the next 20 or 30 years.
Yeah. So it running out of time now, but if there was something that people need to take home with and say, hey, what is it that I have to be concerned about? What do I have to be weary of? What would it be about, looking into buying a piece of property?
As a buyer, be aware that you don't have to sign a contract as a buyer for a buyer's agent, somebody to represent you. You want somebody with knowledge on properties. Go in, another set of eyes that can look at the property and kind of guide you and say, you know what, I don't think this property's right because of this. I carry unrestricted supervisor's license, construction. I carry my remodeler's license. We do remodeling all the time. So we go in and we look at these properties and go, you know what, I don't think this is right because it's going to need this, 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 and this. And you don't have the $20,000 to do this work. So I think we should pass on this and go. You don't have to get to a home inspection and pay $400 or $500 to a home inspector to have him tell you that. So we save you that.
Good, that's great.
And you shouldn't have to sign a contract for a buyer's agent or pay an additional fee. We work with buyers for free.
That's great.
We do all this work for nothing. We go in there, we treat everybody like family.
That's great.
Yeah.
So Duane, how do folks get a hold of you?
You can find us. We just fired up our brand new website last night.
Last night, fresh off the press.
And I love it.
Right.
My son graduated from Emerson, and he
Excellent.
took over that
Good.
and did the media, and just went up last night. www.A1Realty of Central MA.com. You can call us at 508-868-4662, and we'll be glad to talk to you.
Excellent.